Welcome back, Obscure Mic people. It's your boy Bark. He's back. I'm back. I'm back. Anyways, going to do an ultimate condenser shootout today. I've got the handy dandy Avlex AVS 77 in front of my mouth hole now. Kind of a baseline. This thing's like $500 when it was new back in the day. I've been using this on my podcast, Stuck in My Generation. Highly suggest you check it out. But we're not here for that. We're here for this condenser shootout, $100 and under. Before I introduce the mics, I want to say there was a few microphones that were suggested that I did not include. One of which that I can remember off the top of my head is the SEX1. Sex one. It's the Sex one. That's $109 everywhere I looked. I didn't see it for $99 anywhere. That could change. It could fluctuate, but I kept checking somewhat regularly, and it was still $109. So I wanted to keep this at 100 even and under. I didn't want to do 105, 109, 110. I know it's not much more, but it's hard to call it a $100 or less condenser shootout if I'm not being honest about whether it's $100 or less. There's also some microphones that came in at a 50 and under clip. I'm going to do a 50 and under. It's going to be a small shootout, maybe 4 or 5 microphones, condensers, which I deem to be the best at $50 or under. But I didn't want to throw those in against these $100 condensers. Now, what made me choose these condensers is mostly preference, one of which I did a shootout on, the MXL shootout, the 770 versus the 990 versus the V67. As of today, the V67 won the vote. It beat out the 990 and the 770, and I think that's the right choice. I know a lot of folks out there think it's not, but that's what audio is all about. It's, it's all what you like. But I did agree with the majority that chose the MXL V67, so that's going to be an entry into the $100 budget condenser shootout. So there is the V67 for you. That will be part of this shootout. I also have a oddball, a Scarlett Studio CM25 Mark III. Comes with the newest Scarlett Solo Pack, Studio Pack, whatever. It's actually not a bad little mic. You can get this. Now, here's the kicker. The reason this is in the $100 or less shootout, nowhere are you going to see this pre-owned or new if somebody sells it new out of the recording pack for $100. It's between 50 and 75 typically. And I think it's worth an entry into this, so I'm going to throw it in there as well. We've also got the Audio-Technica AT2020. I didn't want to throw this one in the shootout, but I had a handful of people say it's $99. People love it. If anything, show people why they should not choose this over some others. So while I don't think this quite belongs in the shootout, and the reason why is because it's a small diaphragm condenser, it's harsh up top in my opinion, and I just don't think it sounds that good. That's just my opinion. Self noise is like 20 dB. To me, that's a knock on it. You make the call after I'm done with this. If you think this sounded great, then fine. But hopefully we can kind of prove that this is sort of a Yeti-ish gimmick. It was marketed really well, and people just hear AT2020. I actually had a buddy of mine say, like, he was asking me about microphones, and I was like, what you got? And he boasted very proudly, an AT2020, bro. Like, oh, cool. Not a terrible mic, just, it's not good enough to boast about, in my opinion. We also have the AKG Perception 100. Thanks to my Perception 100 dude, Novarot, or whatever his channel's called at the moment. Who fucking knows that guy? I love him. I think he's entertaining. We talk. Jesus. Shout out to you, bro. I like the guy a lot, and he likes this mic a lot, and I agree with him that it should be in here. I could have stuck the AKG P120 in there, but again, right now it's at $80, I think, new. But I've seen it 109, this and that. I think this is just better. And this is, you're not going to pay $100 for this ever. It's going to be between $35 and $85. but I think this is better than the P120. And they're very close anyway, so if you're going to be one of those people that argue, like, you should put the P120 in there, they're real close. That's just, the P100 is a little smoother. We've got the Behringer B1. The Behringer B1. This is an $89 large diaphragm condenser microphone. I know a lot of people that swear by this thing. I haven't had it for very long, but it's going to be in this shootout as well because it's $89. Comes with a hard case. It's a heck of a package. We're going to nix the packages, though. This is all about the mic. This is all about the mic. We got the Maono PM500. This is a new one. Still not released as of today, to my knowledge, on Amazon, but I have been assured that it will be $99, and what a steal at $99 it is. So that'll be in there. Love to have a oddball name like Maono in there. And another microphone you should never pay more than $100 for, typically between $40 and $85, like the Perception 100. I know we're talking about some discontinued models here, being the Perception 100, and that's it. Perception 100, and this, the M Audio Nova, which I think is one hell of a deal for always under $100. If you pay more than $100, you're messing up. I mean, you can get it anywhere, almost. You just got to keep an eye out for it. eBay, they pop up. Goodwill, they pop up. You know, Music Go Round, they pop up. They pop up all the time, and it's a good one. So there you go. No, I'm lying. The favorite in this $100 or less condenser shootout, at least in my opinion, is the Neat Worker Bee. $89. Everyone that's reviewed this loves it. It's not even a true large diaphragm condenser. It's the only one we won't be using the InnoGear shock mount on because it just doesn't work. So I got this super cool vintage stand that I mounted it on that I won in an auction with some microphones, some old vintage microphones. So we got the Neat Worker Bee. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's an 8-way shootout. That's what she said. We're not going to waste much time on this. Let's go ahead and start running these microphones through some tests. I'm going to do the tests first and get those out of the way. And then we're just going to talk into each one of them for a little bit, give some thoughts, and I'll look forward to you guys giving me your thoughts. Let's get this started. Okay, first we're going to start with the Perception 100. This is one of my favorite microphones. Good deal as always. You can get it cheap. I think it sounds good, nice and smooth. Doesn't have the most robust low end to my ears, but it is pretty solid. So, Plosives test first. All of these are going to be similar. I don't have high hopes for any of them. I am going to take the windscreen off the Worker Bee because it's only fair. So here we go. I'm going to try to stay about 4 inches off the mic and say, Peter Piper peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Cut out there on the first go-round of Plosives. Not too impressed there. Now, granted, I don't worry about Plosives that much because easily fixable windscreen, pop filter, proper mic technique. I'm not going to talk into this. I'm not going to do a podcast and be like, hey, Peter Piper picked a peck. It's not going to happen. Let's go ahead and switch to the next mic. It's the Audio-Technica AT2020 up next, and it doesn't sound too bad, honestly, after I trashed it, but I still don't love it. 4 inches off, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. I would say that and the Perception 100 are very similar. Something's going to beat them on that, I am sure. Next mic. Now we have the MXL V67, and we're going to throw the Plosives into it just like we did the last two microphones. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. If I had to say one was better, I think the V67 beats out the Perception 100 and AT2020 by like 0.1%. It's just so minimal that it doesn't matter. I mean, those two, one cut out, one damn near did. This one didn't really cut out, but it wasn't much better. On to the next mic. Now we've got the Scarlett CM25 Mark III. Going to throw Plosives into the front of this microphone. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. I think that was similar to the V67. Maybe not exactly, but pretty close. Maybe a little less harsh on the plosives. So I feel like I'm working down the list, or my mind is just crazy. Let's move on to the next mic. Now we've got the Behringer B1. And this one threw me for a loop because the XLR is facing the right side. So it took me a second to get it connected. Let's throw some plosives into this. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. See, now at this point, it's just getting messy. Really, nothing is pulling away as better at plosives than another. They're all pretty bad so far, but that's condenser microphones for you. Next mic. Now we've got the Maono in front of us, and I'm going to throw some plosives into it about 4 inches away from its large diaphragm capsule. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled pineapple pizza. Once again, I think they are all about the same. None of them are really standing out as far as plosives go to me. On to the next mic. Now we have the M Audio Nova in front of us. Going to throw the plosives into it from 4 inches away. Getting sick of saying it. Feel like Bandrew and all his comparisons. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. I want to say that's the best so far, but my God, after doing 6 mics, I just don't know. Let me know. Each step of the way, comment as we're going, pause the video, do what you got to do. Feel like the M Audio Nova might have been the best at plosives so far. I could be easily wrong. Let me know. Last mic on the plosives test. Now we have no windscreen or pop filter on the Neat Worker B, and we're going to throw plosives into it about 4 inches away from the capsule. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pineapple pizza. I feel like that was similar to the Nova. I either threw these in a weird order where they just slightly incrementally get better at plosives, or this is just going to be a long-ass review. Let's move on to proximity. Now we are back on the Perception 100, and I've got to throw out there that I think most of these microphones, the gain staging is very similar. 21 is what I have the Rodecaster Pro set at, no processing, nothing like that. But we will process the mics at the end of the video to see what sounds best with processing, because obviously most of us are going to process our microphones. So let's go ahead and get on top of this one and see what that proximity effect is like. Is it buttery smooth? Is it boomy? Let's find out. AKG Perception 100. When you get right on top of the Perception 100, this is what it sounds like when you get right on top of the Perception 100. Audio-Technica AT2020. When you get right on top of the Audio-Technica AT2020, this is what it sounds like when you're right on top of the Audio-Technica AT2020. On to the next mic. Now we are on the MXL. Okay, so real quick before I get on top of the MXL, this one I have to jump my volume fader up just a little bit to hit the same levels, and I may still have to go in post and do a little something. But as far as the Perception 100 and AT2020, I like the Perception 100 proximity effect better, no surprise there. When you get right on top of the MXL V67, this is what it sounds like when you get right on top of the MXL V67. This is what it sounds like. And so far, I think I like that the best of the three. Let's move on to the Scarlett mic. All right, now we're on the Scarlett microphone, and I'm going to get right on top of this and do some proximity effect and see what it sounds like. I am right on top of the Scarlett CM25 Mark III. I'm right on top of the CM25 Mark III, and this is what it sounds like when you're in close proximity to the mic. That's V67, a little better, but this wasn't bad, I don't think. Again, comment, let me know what you think. That's all about you. Oh, that tricky B1 got me again with its XLR pointing right. Behringer B1. Let's get right on top of this microphone so you can hear what it sounds like with my mouth in close proximity. When you get right on top of the Behringer B1, This is what it sounds like when you're right on top of the Behringer B1. Didn't hate that. It's Maono time. Now we've got the Maono PM500 hooked back up. Let's get right on top of it so you can hear its proximity effect. When you get right on top of the PM500, this is what it sounds like. When you get right on top of the PM500, this is what it sounds like. And I think that was the darkest of the bunch so far. Maybe the muddiest as well, or just dark, somewhere in between muddy and dark. But I don't hate it because I know when I throw compression on this thing, it's going to shine. Maybe. We'll find out. Let's move on to the next proximity test. M-Audio Nova's next. All right, I got to say the M-Audio Nova, one thing about it, when you plug it in, it does take a few seconds for phantom power to get this mic going. I don't know if that's because of the Class A FET. I don't know. I'm not much of a circuitry guy. A lot of guys on the Discord, guys and gals on the Discord server are really good with that stuff. I'm just not interested in it, so I don't learn it. Yeah, maybe I should be since I do all these mic experiments, but I like to keep it simple for all you simple folk like me. Let's get it right on top of the M-Audio Nova. When you get right on top of the M-Audio Nova, this is what it sounds like when you're right on top of the M-Audio Nova. Kind of broadcasty. Let's move on to the Neat Worker Bee. Now we've got the Neat Worker Bee wired up. We got to turn it up just a little. So in my experience, it is the V67 and the Worker Bee need a little extra bump on the fader to get the same levels as the rest. Mostly the same levels. Let's get on top of the Worker Bee just like the Queen would do. When you're right on top of the Neat Worker Bee, this is what it sounds like. When you're right on top of the Neat Worker Bee, this is what it sounds like. That V67, I just feel like has sweet proximity effect. I don't know. Again, this is about you. You comment and let me know. Plosives, proximity, and what you think about what's coming up, which is off-axis rejection, which is probably going to be similar across the board too. This video is probably going to come down to sound, and I will have a vote with all these microphones, and I want to know which one you would own if somebody handed you a coupon for any one of these microphones. Which one are you using your coupon on? Very curious to know. In the poll on the community tab on Obscure Mike's homepage. Let's get to the off-axis rejection test. We've got the Perception 100 wired back up, and we're going to do some off-axis rejection by spinning this thing around. Something else I noticed, a little bit of self noise may be evident on the Perception 100, or it doesn't like my cord, but there is something in the background of this microphone. But this is how the mic sounds, but we may have a slight problem as far as background noise, or maybe it's just the high self noise. It's definitely there. So I apologize for that. The show must go on. Into the microphone, front of the Perception 100. Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, 180 degrees, the other 90-degree angle, and then back around to the front of the microphone, onto the next microphone for the off-axis rejection. Now we're on the AT2020, going to do the same thing. 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and then all the way back around to the front of the microphone, onto the next. Now we're on the V67, going to do the same thing. Front of the microphone, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and then back around to the front of the microphone, onto the next. Now we're on the Scarlett CM25 Mark III, talking into the microphone, going to turn it 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and back around to the front of the microphone, and that's its off-axis rejection. On to the next. I'm going to get sick of saying that. Behringer B1 didn't get me that time with the XLR facing that way. Into the front of the microphone, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and then back around to the front of the microphone. And I feel like that's done the worst so far. Again, I could totally be wrong. And it would shock no one. On the Maono, doing the same thing. Into the front of the microphone, 90 degrees, 180, 90 degrees, back around slowly to the front of the microphone. And I don't feel like that was far behind the B1. as I've said a million times, on to the next. Now we're on the M-Audio Nova. The M-Audio Nova, and we're going to do the same damn test. Let's do it. Into the front of the microphone, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and then back around to the front of the microphone. On to the next. Now we've got the Neat King Bee, the Neat King Bee, the Neat King Bee. Now we've got the Neat King Bee to spin around in front of me. I do jingles for hire. Bring it on. All right, here we go. Into the front of the worker bee, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, and then slowly back around to the front of the microphone. And I feel like the worker bee did pretty well with off-axis rejection as well. But again, it's about you. It's about you, bro and sis. You. Well, what's left? There's a ton of things I could do, but let's just do processing. Let's do little sound clip. It's hot in the studio. Do a little sound clip, unprocessed, then processed, and we can move on. Let's do it. AKG Perception 100. Definitely something going on. I still hear more self noise than anything else, and it's probably, for me to hear that much self noise, it can't be just normal. But again, I do know what this mic sounds like, and it does sound like this. So just try to disregard that self noise, which is unfortunate. Let's go ahead and test this one with processing on. Right now you're listening to the mic without processing. Let's go ahead and crank it up to 11. It's just processing, bro. There's no numbers. Not at least on the Rodecaster Pro. We've got compression, de-esser, Aphex Big Bottom on the AKG Perception 100, and this is what it sounds like with those enabled, which I'm going to use the same settings on all of them. It is also the very generic one-click compression. It's not the adjustable that came on one of the later versions of the Rodecaster Pro, so keep that in mind. Just the one touch-and-go audio processing. So that was the perception before and after. On to the next. My least favorite, the Audio-Technica AT2020. And for the record, I still think that this sounds the harshest of all of them, and maybe even oddly the thinnest or oddest of all of them. But there's some fanboys out there that will want to rip me apart about it. Anyways, this is the AT2020 unprocessed. Let's switch that processing back on. And now you're hearing the microphone with compression, de-esser, the Aphex Big Bottom, and this is what it sounds like. It jumps out of a mix for sure. The clarity's really good. There's just something about it I don't love. I know, it's turned into an AT2020 hate video. I don't mean for it to. Most of these mics are not $99. This is $99. The Worker Bee's $10 less. Pretty sure I'd rather have it. On to the next. I'm pouring some blood, sweat, and tears into this video today. Just because I'm sweaty. Okay, V67, this is the microphone unprocessed. Now I'm going to turn processing on the MXL V67. Now it's completely processed with the same compression, de-esser, and Aphex Big Bottom as we have heard before, and this is what the microphone sounds like. And let me tell you, I'm still a big fan of this microphone. I think it sounds smooth as shit, and it sounds good. That's just my ears. On my voice, I really like the V67. Specially processed. On to the next. And now we are back on the CM25 Mark III. And this is a surprising little contender, man. I don't think it sounds great by any means, but in my experience, when you throw processing on this microphone, which by the way has about the same exact setup as the AT2020, it's a small diaphragm condenser microphone, but I think it's smoother, not as clear. The clarity's better on the AT2020, but it's just not as harsh to my ears. Let's go ahead and throw processing on it. And now we've got compression, de-esser, Big Bottom, and this is what the microphone sounds like. I will say, most of this off the top of my head, I would probably throw the CM25 out of the competition from what I've heard. I think it's a pretty solid little condenser microphone, but I don't think it quite belongs with a lot of these other microphones. So not really feeling the CM25. Maybe I'll hook them all back up and process of elimination for what I think, and you can let me know what you think in the poll and in the comments down below. On to the next. The B1 got me again. The B1 got me again. XLR, I tried to stick it into the left this time, that's what she said, and I should have stuck it into the right and tried to hit the right wall. Whatever. This is the B1 unprocessed. I'm going to reach over and turn processing on this one. And it's after using these real quick, the B1 is also pretty harsh. And I think I would go on to say that the Audio-Technica AT2020 sounds better than the B1 in my opinion. So I would throw the B1 out of this competition and actually leave the mic I've been hating on the whole time, the AT2020, in. Let's see if processing changes that. Now the mic is completely processed with compression, de-esser, big bottom, and this is what it sounds like, and it sounds super harsh to me. Not a big fan of the sound of the B1. Again, 89 bucks. You could do worse, but I think we've proven here on this exact review, you can do better. I'm throwing this one out of the competition. It's going with the Scarlett CM25 Mark III B1. Peace out. Clarity's solid, but it's like harshness. Clarity and then harshness, it kind of goes together. Like to get clarity without harshness is doing it right. B1's not quite doing it right. I digress. On to the next. I got a fever. And the cure is not more cowbell. It's air conditioning. It's air conditioning. Maono PM500. One of the smoother mics of them all, but also one of the more muffled, maybe slightly muffled sounds. Let's go ahead and throw processing on and see what it does to that. All right, we've got compression, de-esser, big bottom, and this is what the Maono PM500 sounds like. I think it's very similar to the V67 in sound, but the V67 has a little more clarity, and sadly, I don't know. It's tough. I'll listen back to this and be like, the PM500 was my favorite. Sorry, I threw a plosive at you there. But I don't know. I almost want to say I'd throw this out, but not yet. On to the next. All right, we've got the Audio Nova hooked back up, and it's kind of annoying that it takes that long for the phantom power to power this thing up and get going, but that's okay. It's only like a few seconds. Not like you're constantly turning on and off your mic unless you're doing this. This is how the M-Audio Nova sounds unprocessed. Let's throw the processing on it now. All right, we've got compression, de-esser, and an Aphex big bottom on the M-Audio Nova. And I think that sounds smoother than the Audio-Technica and maybe even smoother than the Perception 100. There's something just a little off in those high frequencies, not exactly harsh, but just a tiny bit off to me. But I think at this point, it still warrants a continued entry into this shootout. So M-Audio Nova, this is what it sounds like processed. On to the last. The Sibilance test. That's the hunt for Red October. And we're back to the neat Worker B. And that's kind of music to my ears all of a sudden. Just kind of a really good sound there out of the Worker B. And again, not a large diaphragm condenser. You know, not small, but mid-range. Let's throw some processing on the Worker B. All right, we've got the compression, the de-esser, and the big bottom on the Worker B, and this is what it sounds like. A tad harsh to my ears, but more well-rounded from the lows to the highs until that little tiny bit of harshness. This is a really impressive microphone for $89. It's definitely a contender. Now, for the rest of this, I'm going to keep processing on as I sweat my sweat out. I won't be dirty on that one. I won't be dirty. I'm going to go ahead and hook these all up kind of quickly. Last kind of lightning round and see if I can eliminate ones that way. But again, you. It's about you. It's about you. Comment, vote. It's about you. It ain't about me. I don't mean shit. Worker B is out. Let's go Worker B versus P100. Perception 100 with the processing on versus the Worker B. I hate that self noise is there, but I'm going to switch back one more time. I think I like the Worker B more than the Perception 100. Sorry, that 100. Sorry, Novrot. But let's confirm real quick that would be my choice. but at the same time, I think it's okay because I think the Worker Bee sounds better. So AKG Perception 100 sadly is out of here. I'm going to have to try that with another cord and see if that self noise still persists or not. The Worker Bee, in my opinion, is in the pole position trying to win this race. Let's switch over to the M Audio Nova. It's been performing pretty well and see how that goes. I'm going to be straight up with you. I kind of hope the M Audio Nova gets knocked out because of the time it takes for me to be able to talk into it. Alas, I don't know if it will be or not. M Audio Nova, it's been a very respectful performer in my opinion. I'm going to switch it back over to the Neat Worker Bee here in just a second as I digest this sound into my ear holes. This is going to be a long video, one of the longer ones I've done. Let's go ahead. M Audio Nova, valiant effort. If there's a participation ribbon to be had, it's this one. If it doesn't win the whole thing for me, but again, it's about you. Back to the Worker Bee. Worker Bee, Worker Bee. I think I like this Worker Bee. This and that are very close, though. This and that are very close. I'm going to throw out the Nova just because I like the slightly darker tone, at least in my ear holes, of the Worker Bee. So all these microphones, I feel like the Worker Bee is really getting it done. Again, it's about you. Let's go to the Maono PM500 versus the Worker Bee. Let me remind myself, the Worker Bee, not very harsh to my ears. Maybe a tad bit on the darkish side, which I typically prefer. I know not everyone does, but I feel like this thing is well-rounded. Let's PM500 it. Maono PM500. Let me start off by saying I actually really like this mic. It's darker than the Neat Worker Bee, but I honestly think it's maybe a little bit too dark. And there is still a harshness almost in the mids, if that makes any sense. There's just a little harshness in the mids, maybe just a tiny bit of a scooped sound, and then just a weird frequency there in the mid-range. Not really. I do love the PM500, but I think I'm going to go ahead and make the call. The Worker Bee, more well-rounded, more suitable to more voices. And I think if I had to turn in my coupon for one of these two, it would be the Worker Bee. Let's see if the V67 or the AT2020 can beat it out. Now, again, we're on the Neat Worker Bee. The Neat Worker Bee. Again, well-rounded sound. Let's plug in the V67. Sorry about the clicky-clacky there. And see what we got here as far as sound goes. Are these two close? Will this get tossed out? Will this surprisingly knock that out? I don't know. Let's switch over. V67. This is, I feel like this and the Maono PM500 are very close in sound. I feel like the PM500 has a funky little mid-range sound there where the V67 doesn't. The V67's pretty smooth, but also has some harsh characteristics up top. Not enough to just call it purely harsh, but there's just something, just a little buzz there at the top that I don't like. Granted, the Neat Worker Bee has that to a lesser extent to my ears. But the Worker Bee, I think the 67 has got to go. Valiant effort. Right now, I would rank them Worker Bee, maybe Nova, and then the PM500 and V67 almost in a tie for third, which is a great out of Maono. Absolutely great out of Maono. It looks like the Worker Bee is going to win this one, but let's make sure the Audio-Technica AT2020 doesn't shock the world. Audio-Technica, Technica. Look out. Here comes the AT2020. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I'm going to plug into the Worker Bee, and I personally am going to declare this the champion of the $100 or less budget condenser microphone. Again, it is all based off what you think, what you like as far as sound goes. Me personally, I think it's close. I think the Nova was really good. The Perception 100 was good, but that self noise, that didn't knock it out. I just think it was a little thinnish, not as robust as the other mics. But congrats to Maono and the V67. and the Nova for putting on a pretty solid performance against the Worker Bee. I just think the Worker Bee is going to sound good on most voices with the least amount of criticism overall. Again, we'll find out on the poll. Go vote and comment. Let me know what you thought. Thanks for sticking around for this video. Thanks for watching what I perceived might have been more than 2 or 3 ads for this one. It helps obscure mics. Thank you. But if you do get YouTube Premium, you don't have ads. And I've got it, and I like it. Don't forget about the memberships. Videos like this come early to those folks, although this one will not because of the time that it's been since I've released a video. This one's going to get released as soon as I edit it because I'm excited about it. So the Neat Worker Bee, to me, is the champion as far as these $100 budget condensers go. Again, go vote and let me know down below what you thought. And thanks again for joining me. You guys are the greatest. And thanks a lot to these fine people who are keeping the channel going by being members. It helps out a lot, but so does views. So everyone's helping. But thanks to those guys and gals for going the extra mile and being a member of the Obscure Mics Obscure Club. Turkey Club, Billy Club, Club Med. Peace out.